Think you could be an 1880s cowboy? Here's what the job required. Survive on $30 a month. Work 18-hour days 7 days a week for months straight. Sleep on the ground. Eat 5 foods until your body breaks down. Master skills that take years to learn. And accept that you'll probably be dead or permanently injured within 7 years. Hollywood sells cowboys as romantic heroes living free on the range. Cowboys were poorly paid seasonal laborers doing one of the most dangerous, lowest status jobs on the frontier. Most were desperate men with no better options. The average cowboy career lasted 7 years because they were too injured to continue or dead. Permanent injuries were expected. You couldn't just decide to be a cowboy. You needed specific physical capabilities most modern people don't have. Skills that took years to master. The ability to function on minimal sleep and food, high pain tolerance, and genuine desperation, because the pay was terrible.
Over the next several minutes, we're going through the actual requirements to be an 1880s cowboy.
The skills, the physical demands, the economic reality, and why most people who tried either failed immediately or didn't survive long enough to become experienced. You think you can ride a horse? Maybe you've been to a petting zoo or taken a trail ride. That's sitting on a horse someone else controls. Cowboy horsemanship was a completely different skill level. Cowboys rode half wild horses, barely broken to saddle. Horses with volatile temperaments that actively fought being controlled. Horses that would bolt, buck, or try to crush you against trees. Riding duration was 10 to 15 hours per day minimum during cattle drives. Active herding with constant direction changes, speed variations, terrain navigation, cattle management from horseback. Your thighs, back, and core had to maintain position during bucking or bolting. Absorb shock from rough terrain for hours. Control a 1,200-pound animal with subtle pressure. Function while exhausted, sleep, deprived, and malnourished. A significant percentage of cowboys suffered serious riding injuries within their first year. Common injuries included broken bones from being thrown, crushed legs from horse falls, head trauma, spinal damage. Modern recreational riding involves gentle horses, short duration, protective gear, emergency services available. Cowboy riding involved volatile animals, all-day duration, no protection, nearest doctor, potentially days away. Achieving competent cowboy-level horsemanship took 2 to 3 years of daily riding. Multiple serious falls and injuries. Muscle development modern people don't have. Pain tolerance most can't develop. If you haven't spent years developing riding muscles and reflexes, the first day would put you in the hospital. Riding the horse was just one part. You had to keep it alive and functional. Cowboys were responsible for saddle fitting and adjustment, detecting lameness or injury early, treating basic ailments without veterinary help, making saddle and tack repairs, managing feed and water on limited resources. You needed to know proper saddle positioning, because wrong positioning meant the horse develops sores and can't work. Cinch tightness, because too loose means the saddle slips and you die, while too tight means the horse can't breathe. Selection and use. Hoof care basics. Reading horse communication involved watching ear position, muscle tension, breathing changes, subtle cues that warned when a horse was about to bolt, buck, or kick. Failure to read these signs meant injury or death. Horse care added 1 to 2 hours per day minimum before riding, during breaks, after riding. This was on top of the 15-plus hour workday. If your horse went lame or died due to your negligence, you might be fired. Definitely had to pay for the horse, which cost months of wages, were potentially stranded in dangerous territory. During a cattle drive, cowboys often used multiple horses. A string of 5 to 7 horses rotated to prevent exhaustion. You had to know each horse's temperament and quirks, which horse for which task, how to manage multiple animals simultaneously. You couldn't be hired as a cowboy without proven horse skills. You couldn't develop the necessary skills without working as a cowboy. Most entry-level cowboys started as teenagers, learning through years of ranch work. Most modern people fail at requirement number 1. You work out, you run marathons. Cowboy work required a type of physical capability modern fitness culture doesn't develop. Cowboys needed grip strength to control ropes handling 1,500-pound steers, core strength to stay on bucking horses, leg strength to ride 12 plus hours daily, upper body strength to throw ropes 40 plus feet accurately, back strength to lift saddles weighing 40 pounds repeatedly. Daily strength requirements included throwing and controlling a lasso, wrestling calves for branding that weighed 100 to 200 pounds and fought for their lives, lifting saddles onto horses 50 plus times per day, digging post holes by hand, moving heavy equipment without machinery. Gym strength is isolated muscle groups, controlled movements, short durations, with recovery time. Cowboy strength was full body integration, awkward angles, sustained effort, no recovery time, while sleep deprived and underfed. Rope work required grip strength. Modern people don't have. This developed through years of daily rope handling. Modern grip strength training doesn't replicate the endurance component. Attempting cowboy work without adequate strength caused torn muscles, joint damage, hernias, back injuries. Most cowboys started as teenagers when bodies could adapt. Adult bodies trying to develop these capabilities often broke down instead. Strength alone wasn't enough. You needed endurance modern athletes can't comprehend. Typical cattle drive day meant 15 to 18 hours of continuous activity. Continuous physical labor from before dawn until after dark for 90 plus days straight. Cattle don't rest on weekends. No weekends off. No sick days. No vacation. You worked every single day for the entire drive. After week 1, you're exhausted but managing. Week 4, your body's breaking down. Week 8, you're operating on pure willpower. Week 12, most cowboys had stress fractures, chronic pain, and visible physical deterioration. Ultramarathon runners experience extreme exertion for 24 to 48 hours, then recovery. Cowboys experienced extreme exertion for 12 plus weeks continuously with no recovery, while maintaining skills that require precision. You had to maintain rope throwing accuracy while exhausted, horse control while sleep deprived, decision-making ability while physically depleted, quick reflexes when your body was breaking down. A significant percentage of new cowboys quit or were fired within the first month because their bodies couldn't adapt quickly enough. Minor injuries were daily, including rope burns, bruises, cuts, sprains. You worked through them. After the first weeks, cowboys operated in constant pain, from saddle sores, muscle strains, joint aches, sunburn, blisters. This was normal. You ignored it and worked. For minor injuries, there was no treatment, just endurance. For major injuries, crude field medicine, whiskey for pain. Continue working if physically possible. Modern people take ibuprofen for headaches. Cowboys rode with broken ribs, infected wounds, and torn muscles. Cowboy work meant accepting constant physical discomfort as your baseline existence. Now comes the actual job skills. These took years to master. Using a lasso involved understanding rope physics, calculating throw distance and lead time, accounting for wind and horse movement, maintaining accuracy while riding at speed, controlling the rope after catch. Different rope types existed for different tasks, including lasso for catching, riata for specific cattle work, different lengths for different purposes, each handled differently. Beginning ropers might catch a stationary calf from standing position after weeks of practice. Competent cowboys caught running cattle from galloping horses in wind and dust. That progression took years.
Controlling a 1,500-pound steer on the other end of your rope required grip strength, body positioning, rope wrapping technique.
Meant lost fingers. Horse communication to help hold the animal. Rope injuries included severed fingers from improper wrapping, rope burns severe enough to scar permanently, shoulder dislocations from holding fighting cattle, being dragged when rope got tangled. Cowboys used ropes dozens of times per day during active cattle work. Every throw had to be competent because lives and livelihoods depended on it. Incompetent roping meant cattle escaped, causing financial loss, injuries to yourself or others, being labeled useless and fired. Roping was just the tool. You needed to understand cattle. Cowboys had to read herd mood and stress levels, individual cattle temperament, stampede warning signs, weather effects on cattle behavior, terrain effects on movement patterns. Moving cattle required positioning yourself correctly, pressure and release timing, understanding cattle social hierarchy, using terrain strategically, coordinating with other cowboys. Cattle stampede at night from lightning, predators, unknown causes. Cowboys had to recognize early warning signs, position to control the herd, ride alongside stampeding cattle in darkness, turn the herd without getting crushed. Stampede deaths were common. Cowboys caught in stampedes were trampled, thrown from horses into the herd, crushed against terrain. Understanding cattle took years of observation, multiple cattle drives, learning from experienced cowboys, surviving your mistakes. Books couldn't teach this. Cowboys needed celestial navigation, tracking skills to find lost cattle, weather prediction as a survival necessity, water source location that meant life or death, edible plant identification, basic veterinary knowledge, emergency medical skills, gun maintenance and use. Lost cattle had to be found. You needed to read tracks days old, distinguish individual cattle by track characteristics, follow trails across various terrain, predict animal behavior and movement. Getting separated from the herd meant self-rescue ability, fire starting, water finding, food procurement, navigation back to herd, all without modern equipment. Your equipment was your life. You needed to maintain saddles, repair tack, sharpen knives, maintain weapons, fix tools in field conditions with limited resources. These skills collectively took years of frontier living, mentorship from experienced hands, trial and error, with survival as stakes. Now let's talk about what this nightmare of a job actually paid. Typical cowboy wages were $30 to $40 per month in 1880s dollars. That's roughly $900 to $1,200 in today's money per month for 18-hour days, 7 days a week, doing work that would kill most people. Calculate the hourly rate. $30 per month divided by 540 hours of work, which is 18 hours, times 30 days, equals roughly 5.5 cents per hour in period money, or about $1.65 per hour in modern equivalent for expert-level dangerous work. That wage was only during active season, 3 to 4 months during cattle drive season. The rest of the year, many cowboys had no work and no income. Annual income might be 3 to 4 months of wages to last 12 months. What that bought was basic supplies, maybe some whiskey, gambling losses, nothing else. No savings, no retirement, no security. One illness or injury meant destitute. These wages attracted freed slaves with no other employment options, young men with no inheritance, immigrants with no alternatives, desperate people who'd work for anything. Ranch owners knew they could exploit desperate labor. Modern minimum wage is about $15 per hour with labor protections. Cowboy wage was $1.65 per hour equivalent with zero protections, benefits, or recourse for injury. From your wages, you paid for your own equipment, including saddle, rope, personal items, replacement gear when things broke, medical care if injured, lost wages if too injured to work, fines for mistakes like lost cattle or damaged equipment. A decent saddle cost $40 to $50, more than a month's wages. Rope cost $2 to $3, which was 10% of monthly wages. If your saddle got ruined or horse damaged it, you bought a new one from poverty wages. Some ranches ran company stores where cowboys were forced to buy supplies at inflated prices. Cowboys could end up in debt to the ranch, despite working constantly. Most cowboys blew their entire season's earnings in the first town they reached on alcohol, gambling, prostitution, because what was the point of saving poverty wages? Cowboys received no health insurance, no injury compensation, no retirement, no life insurance, no protections of any kind. Injured meant fired. Too old meant no work. Dead meant nobody compensated your family. Labor laws didn't exist. Ranchers could fire without cause, withhold wages, change terms, arbitrarily, blacklist troublemakers. Cowboys had zero recourse. Retirement for cowboys meant too injured to work, destitute, begging, dying young. Very few cowboys became ranch owners or achieved financial security. This job was exploitation wrapped in mythology. Physical and skill requirements aside, cowboy life required psychological resilience most humans don't possess. Cattle drives meant weeks of identical days doing identical work, eating identical food with identical people. No variety, no stimulation, no entertainment, no change. On the range, there were no newspapers, no books, no conversation, because everyone was too tired. No mental engagement, just you, cattle, and empty prairie for months. This level of monotony caused depression, dissociation, psychological deterioration. Cowboys described feeling like they were going mad from the sameness. Modern people experience constant stimulation. Phones, entertainment, variety. Going 24 hours without screens causes anxiety. Try 90 days with nothing but cattle and dust. Cowboys turn to alcohol when available, gambling, fighting among themselves, storytelling, singing. Anything to break the monotony. Every day included potential horse accident, cattle stampede risk, weather dangers, robbery possibility, injury from routine work, wildlife encounters, human violence. Living under constant threat caused what we'd now recognize as PTSD, generalized anxiety, hypervigilance, stress-related illness, psychological breakdown. Cowboys took turns on night watch alone in darkness, responsible for thousands of cattle, watching for predators and thieves, knowing stampedes often happened at night, hours of isolated vulnerability. Even when allowed to sleep, cowboys slept on the ground, exposed to weather, listening for danger, ready to spring up instantly. No restful sleep for months. Mental health support didn't exist. Cowboys suffering psychological trauma were considered weak. Many developed alcoholism, violence issues, or suicidal thoughts, with zero resources for help. Cowboys faced dual isolation. Physical isolation from being distant from civilization, and social isolation from being surrounded by people with no meaningful connections. You can't form real bonds when everyone's exhausted. Transient work means people leave. Vulnerability is seen as weakness. Competition for limited spots creates mistrust. Married cowboys spent months away from wives and children. Single cowboys had no opportunity to form relationships. Old cowboys were isolated, alone, died alone. Who actually became cowboys given these conditions? Real cowboys were desperate men with no better options. Historical records show cowboy demographics. Approximately 25% were black, often freed slaves with no other employment options. 15% were Mexican or Hispanic from vaquero tradition and limited alternatives. 10% were Native American displaced from traditional lands. Remainder were poor white men with no inheritance or prospects. Most cowboys started as teenagers, 14 to 18 years old, when bodies could adapt. Average age was early 20s. By age 30, most cowboys were too broken down to continue. Most cowboys had minimal formal education, were illiterate or barely literate, had no marketable skills beyond cowboy work. Educated men had better options. Cowboys came from poverty, landless families, social marginalization, refugee situations, criminal backgrounds fleeing consequences. Wealthy or middle-class men didn't become cowboys because they had alternatives. Cowboys were considered low-class laborers, transient workers, socially marginal. The romantic mythology came later. Men became cowboys because they had no land inheritance. Racial discrimination blocked other employment. They lacked capital for business, were fleeing bad situations, or literally had nothing else available. Cowboys didn't work for adventure, freedom, romance, or glory. They worked because they needed any income, temporary employment, escape from worse situations, survival. Other frontier work available included farming, which required land or capital they didn't have, mining, which was also dangerous and exploitative, railroad work, which was also brutal, military service, which was also low-pay danger. Some hoped to save money, which rarely succeeded, to get their own land eventually, which almost never happened, to move up to ranch management, which was extremely rare. Most just hoped to survive the season. Within the first year, a significant percentage quit, were fired, or were too injured to continue. This work broke most people who tried it. Average cowboy career was 7 years before permanent injury or death ended it. Those who lasted longer were exceptional. End of cowboy career usually meant permanent physical disability, poverty because there were no savings, alcoholism or other addiction, early death. Few positive outcomes existed. The successful ranch owners and trail bosses we hear about were outliers. The typical cowboy died young, poor, and broken. Could you actually be an 1880s cowboy? Skills you don't have include expert horsemanship that took years to develop, master-level roping that took years to learn, cattle behavior expertise impossible to gain quickly, tracking and navigation that required frontier living, survival skills with no modern equivalent training, equipment maintenance, needing specialized knowledge, body requirements you don't meet include functional strength for sustained, awkward labor, endurance for 18-hour days for months, pain tolerance beyond modern baseline, ability to function while sleep-deprived and malnourished. Mental requirements you can't meet include tolerance for months of monotony, ability to function under constant fear, acceptance of chronic loneliness, willingness to work for exploitative wages. The pay wouldn't cover your modern expenses. You're accustomed to healthcare, housing security, food variety, entertainment, savings, retirement plans. $900 per month for 3 months wouldn't support modern life. You're used to social equality, legal protections, complaint mechanisms, fair treatment. Cowboy life offered none of these. Modern people grow up with abundant food, medical care, education, legal rights, physical safety, entertainment, social support. None of this existed for cowboys. Modern bodies are adapted to sedentary life, dependent on modern medicine, conditioned for comfort. Modern people expect fair compensation, reasonable working conditions, legal protections, career advancement, dignity. Cowboys got exploitation, danger, no protections, no advancement, no dignity. You couldn't be a cowboy because modern life hasn't prepared you for that specific type of suffering. Men who actually did this work deserve respect for enduring the genuinely awful conditions. They deserve honest respect for reality. So if cowboy life was this bad, why do we romanticize it? Because the mythology erased everything we just discussed. Cowboy mythology came from dime novels that were fiction, Wild West shows that were entertainment, later movies that were complete fabrication. Romanticization happened after the cowboy era ended. While cowboys were actually working, they were considered low-class laborers. The romance came after they were gone. Mythology removed the poverty, the exploitation, the racial diversity, the desperation, the suffering, the low social status. What remained were white heroes, freedom, adventure, independence, all false. Actual cowboys deserve credit for surviving genuinely terrible conditions. developing impressive skills despite lack of resources, enduring exploitation, building an industry under near impossible circumstances. We honor them better by acknowledging the reality they faced, respecting their desperation and lack of options, recognizing the exploitation they endured, telling the truth about cowboy life instead of perpetuating comfortable myths. Could you be an 1880s cowboy? No. Could most people? Absolutely not. Those conditions were terrible. The men who actually did this work, often because they had no alternative, performed incredibly difficult labor under exploitative conditions. They deserve honest recognition of what they endured. Let me know which requirement would disqualify you first.